We're looking at a plan to protect the environment on English Bites today. In Queensland, the government has introduced laws to protect the state's wild rivers. The laws haven't been passed yet, but if they are, they'll be the first of their kind in Australia. However, there are some groups who warn that the government needs to listen to everyone who uses the rivers, because the changes could have a big effect on industry. Let's hear more about the plan to protect Queensland's wild rivers.
The waterways of far north and northwest Queensland are recognised as some of the most pristine and beautiful rivers in the world. They're also among the last wild rivers on Earth, providing habitat and flowing in a natural state, free of large dams and weirs. Now a proposed wild rivers legislation could protect them forever.
We think we owe it not just to Queenslanders, Australians, but also internationally. We have an obligation that where we can protect such unique environments, we should do so for this generation and future generations as well.
It's a Beattie government election promise.
There would be no development allowed within a kilometre either side of these tributaries.
And one Natural Resources Minister, Stephen Robertson, is determined to deliver.
What we're talking about here is perhaps the most stringent guidelines we've ever seen in Queensland that will protect these unique environments.
To do that, a Wild Rivers Bill must pass through Parliament. Then, later in the year, nominated rivers would be assessed and debated before they could be declared wild rivers. The state government nominated a list of 19 waterways, mostly in Cape York and the Gulf country, to be considered for protection. But conservation groups have called for a total of 60 to be included. The state's river protection commitments will include no new dams or weirs, limits to the size of industries in catchment areas, strictly limited and regulated water allocations, and no new in-stream mining activities.
If we can get this right, then we'll be leading, not just Australia, we'll be leading the world in looking after our rivers and developing a compatible and sustainable economy around that.
People and businesses with interest in those regions say they're worried that the far-reaching legislation, even limited to 19 rivers, will not deliver a sustainable economy, but instead uncertainty. The state government's invited comment from a number of stakeholder groups on wild rivers legislation. That's been instead of public consultation, and it's raised concerns. But the minister says the government's taken all concerns on board, and the talking won't be over until each declaration is assessed.
That is where the opportunities for exhaustive consultation with traditional owners, with grazing interests, mining interests and conservation interests, among others, will really will occur in earnest.
No Australian states have ever tried to tackle river conservation at such a scale. It could potentially be nation leading and world leading. It's a great initiative if it's done properly.
A wild river is a river that's not been changed or disturbed by humans. It's in its natural state. So why has the government decided to try to protect the rivers?
We think we owe it not just to Queenslanders, Australians, but also internationally. We have an obligation that where we can protect such unique environments, we should do so for this generation and future generations as well.
The minister says that they have an obligation to protect the river. An obligation is something that you must do, something that is necessary. They are obliged to protect the rivers for future generations. He means that they have a responsibility to protect the rivers so they'll still be healthy in the future. Let's hear more about how the new laws will protect the rivers.
The state's river protection commitments will include no new dams or weirs, limits to the size of industries in catchment areas, strictly limited and regulated water allocations, and no new in-stream mining activities.
Under the new laws, the state's commitments or promises include no new dams or weirs. A dam is a barrier built to keep in water or to stop it from flowing. A weir is a low dam built across a river. It usually changes the river's flow or the water level. The laws will also limit the size of industries in catchment areas. A catchment is a structure that collects water. A catchment area is all the areas from which water runs into the river. Everything that happens in the catchment area affects the health of the river. So only small industries will be allowed in the catchment area. Listen again.
The state's river protection commitments will include no new dams or weirs, limits to the size of industries in catchment areas, strictly limited and regulated water allocations, and no new in-stream mining activities.
Another of the law's commitments will be strictly limited and regulated water allocations. Strictly means carefully and exactly, and limited means kept within a certain range. Regulated means controlled. Allocations are shares, the amount allowed. So the laws will make sure that the amount of water given to people and industries is carefully controlled and kept within a certain range. The final part of the law is no new in-stream mining activities. There'll be no new mining allowed in streams or rivers. So what will these new laws mean?
If we can get this right, then we'll be leading, not just Australia, we'll be leading the world in looking after our rivers and developing a compatible and sustainable economy around that.
If we get this right, we'll be leading the world in looking after our rivers and developing a compatible and sustainable economy around that. Compatible means able to live together. Sustainable means able to continue for a long time. A sustainable economy is one that can be continued. If businesses that rely on the river cause damage to the river, the economy won't be sustainable. So what do people in business think about the plan?
People and businesses with interests in those regions say they're worried that the far-reaching legislation, even limited to 19 rivers, will not deliver a sustainable economy, but instead uncertainty.
They're worried that the legislation will not deliver a sustainable economy, but instead uncertainty. Uncertainty refers to the state of being in doubt or unsettled. They're worried that they won't be able to run their businesses successfully anymore. And that's all for English Bites today. You can take another look at Queensland's wild rivers by visiting our website.